All right. Well, it's time to begin this class. I am so glad to see all of you. We've been talking about faith of different Bible characters. Today, we're going to talk about Joseph. I want a faith like Joseph. If you read in the book of Genesis, Joseph shows up starting in the 30th chapter. And so off and on through the next 21 chapters, and the book goes through chapter 50, you're going to find the story of Joseph. It will cut away from him some, and the main part starts around chapter 37 and then moves on through most of the rest of the book as you look at Joseph. But I want us to just kind of do an overview, first of all, of Joseph, if we can. He's born into a family of 10 brothers, okay? By the time that he is born, he has 10 brothers at that point. His father is Jacob. His uncle is Esau. He's the first child that was born to Jacob and Rachel. And as a result of that, he becomes his father's special child. I remember hearing somebody not long ago talk about Jacob and his wives. He didn't want to marry Leah. He was fooled into marrying Leah, ended up marrying Rachel eventually, but he loved Rachel. But I loved the person who described this some time ago. Leah is actually my hero. Leah is the one who didn't say, in the New Testament or Old Testament, some of our translations say she had weak eyes, but she had tender eyes. That's the whole point of it. Not that she was nearsighted or anything else, but she had tender eyes. She trusted God, and in fact talked about God a lot. Whereas Rachel kept the household gods, the false gods, under her bed. I think you probably will remember that as you look at the story. One of them was far more spiritual than the other, but the one that he really loved was the one that was less spiritual. She was beautiful, and she was the one he wanted. And so he treats Joseph different than he treats all the rest of the kids. In fact, he gets a special coat. Now, if you grew up, I remember in all the flannel graph stories of my childhood, it was the coat of many colors. Remember that? And it had stripes with different colors on it. It's not what the coat was at all. What we know about that coat is that it was a royal robe. It means that it was made out of the finest materials, and he dressed like a prince, okay? Nobody else in the family had it. They had utilitarian clothes, but he had the clothes of a prince. And that's what it means when it says that he had this special coat. And so a lot of translations when they were made in the 1600s and a little bit later didn't know what that meant. We do know now what that means. It's interesting that the further along we go, the closer we get to the meaning of the original language. It's incredible what we have come to understand in all this. Now, can I tell you that Joseph Daddy never told him no. He got everything he wanted. He really did. With all of that. But for all of that favoritism, he wasn't necessarily a bad kid. I think he made some unwise choices when he talks to his brothers about the dreams he has. But he's not a guy who necessarily wants to lead. He's not a guy who necessarily wants to be the most important. He just is, because his father treats him that way. Again, I'm just saying, how would you like to be his older brothers, who they didn't get a special coat? And they don't get the double portions. And by the way, he wants to give Joseph a double portion, which is only supposed to go to the oldest, which should go to Reuben, not to Joseph. And yet, his daddy's determined that he will give him twice as much as he gives to everybody else. I wouldn't be too brother either. Any one of these brothers, they're going to have a really difficult time. Well, they dislike him so much that when his father sends him to go find his brothers, that they see him and decide to kill him. By the way, when I lived in Dothan, Alabama, the headline for the Dothan Eagle, or the tagline for the Dothan Eagle was, and I heard them say, "Let us go to Dothan." That comes actually from the book of Genesis, where, in fact, Joseph is trying to find his brothers, and he asks, and somebody says, well, I heard people in Dothan, Alabama, that when he got to Dothan, he got thrown in a hole and sold into slavery. It's not particularly a great place. I couldn't believe we had that as our tagline on our news report, but I just don't think they read the rest of the story. But that's the way. Well, Dothan Eagle was a whole different thing. I used to say, because they had so many misspellings and had so many things wrong, that if you ate a rice cake, and you would have nothing in your stomach and nothing in your head. But can I just say that he goes there, they're angry with him, they want to kill him, And Reuben says, no, let's not kill him. Let's just throw him in this pit. And his intention is to let his brothers wander away, and then he's going to rescue him, but he doesn't get a chance to do that because Midianites come through and they sell him into slavery. Now, at this point, they've got to do is that they rip the coat up, that was the special coat that he had, and they dip it in blood, and they bring it back to their dad. And they never say a wild animal killed him, okay? They don't. They just show him the coat and let him make the assumption he's been killed. And he grieves, and it changes him for the rest of his life. He will not be the same person at the thought that he's lost his favorite son, that he's lost Joseph. By the way, there's something you could say about lying here. You know, lying is an attempt to deceive. And I've said this before in some of my classes, but I want to say it here. The brothers did not say he was killed by a wild beast. They just gave him the ripped coat and with the blood on it and let him make his assumptions. Did you know that's lying? It's not the telling of an untruth. Lying is a deception, okay? All deception is lying. It's important that you know that. Not all untruths are lies. It's also important that you know that. If somebody runs in the back door of your house and says the back of the house is on fire and they know that it's not, they're lying. But if you then hear them say it and believe them and you tell your family, we've got to get out, the house is on fire, you're telling an untruth. It's not true, but you're not lying. You know why? Because you're not trying to deceive. You can tell the truth and lie. People do that all the time. They tell what we call a half-truth that leads you to believe something that isn't true. Like the boy that was running in a race against someone else, and there were only 2 people in the race, and his father asked him after the race was over how he did it. He said, well, I came in second, but the guy that I'm always competing with, he was next to last. Well, so the dad assumed he beat the guy. You know how that is. It's lying, okay? It's true, but it absolutely is a lie. Anything that you tell with the intent to deceive is a lie. So that's what they did. And he believes that he's lost his favorite son. Now, Joseph ends up in Egypt. They sell him in Egypt to a very prominent soldier, the leader of the soldiers, actually, of Pharaoh's guard, a man by the name of Potiphar. Potiphar is a pretty fair man. Joseph, in the course of all this time, does everything well, okay? In fact, he does everything so well and so faithfully that Potiphar turns everything over to him, that he doesn't have to run the house at all. Joseph completely runs the house. The only thing he doesn't have permission to is to the wife. He doesn't have permission. Now, here's the problem for Joseph. He's handsome. He's young. He's 17. He looks great. And the wife looks at him and says, wow, this is really wonderful. And so every day she works to try to seduce him. And every day he tries to avoid her. Every day. He's still doing what he believes is the right thing to do. But one day she catches him by the coat and she says, lie with me. And he runs and she's got his coat. So she holds on to that and then calls in the servants and says, well, he tried to rape me. And then tells her husband, well, he tried to rape me. By the way, it should have been a death sentence, but instead he was sent to the prison. Why do you think that is? I don't think Potiphar trusted his wife at all. I think that he believed that he knew what his wife was up to, but he had to do something, so he sends him off to prison rather than having him killed. Now, Joseph, while he's in prison, becomes so good a prisoner that the keeper of the prison turns everything over to Joseph to take care of everything in the prison. He's so faithful. He has a gift at leadership. And he has this optimism and faith that no matter what happens, I'm going to do the best that I can. Now, I want you to think about it. You're 17 years old. Your brothers hate you. They sell you into slavery. You're sold into a house, and you're thinking, I'm a slave here? What are you going to do? Okay? If you just got sold at 17, what are you going to do? Well, I think we'd set up a protest movement or something. We would, or if nothing else, we would probably be people who would be passive aggressive. I may have to be a slave, but I don't have to like it. But not Joseph. That's not what he did. Because he believed that God had a purpose in all of this. And then he gets lied to or lied about and thrown into prison for something he didn't do. Talk about turning sour. Wouldn't it be really easy right now to turn sour and say, well, I'll endure this as long as I have to? But not Joseph. He does something good while he's there. He constantly is helping to the point that he really is running the prison. The prisoner is running the prison in the middle of all of this. Now, there are two guys, and you remember their story, who were special servants of Pharaoh, and they, because of one reason or another, have now been put into prison as well. He interprets some dreams they had. One of them, who is the baker, and the birds came and took the bread that he was carrying, and he said that means that in 2 days you're going to lose your head. But to the other one, the cupbearer, he said it means that in 2 days you're going to be restored. And then he says, as the cupbearer is giving him the thing, he says, remember me when you go back to Pharaoh. And he doesn't. 2 years go by. He doesn't remember him. What's Joseph doing in those 2 years? Serving, helping, doing all that he can to serve as many people as he can. Still the man who's in charge of the prison. That's who he is. After 2 years, Pharaoh has a dream. He doesn't understand what it means. And now the cupbearer goes and remembers what he's done. He said, there was a guy in prison that could tell me everything. He told all about me. He can probably interpret your dreams. And so Pharaoh calls him up. Now he calls him up, and he's going to stand in front of Pharaoh. How are you going to do that? Well, you let me rot in prison all this time. And everybody's lied to me, and I didn't deserve to be a slave. I didn't deserve to be any of these things. You just put up with me. The prison stinks. I'll stink. I'll be fine. No, he shaves, he bathes, he changes clothes. He stands before him in fresh new clothes. And he tells him what his dream means. And you remember the story. 7 years of more so than they've ever had before, followed by 7 years of famine, that everything that was made is going to be eaten up. And he says, you know, those cows, that's what that was all about. That's all those dreams, that's what that was all about. So Pharaoh says, if that's going to be the case, what are we going to do? He said, who can we get to take care of that? And then he says, Joseph, how about you? And Joseph goes, and then a prisoner to second in command of all of Egypt. And his job, to prepare for the 7 years of famine that are coming. It's kind of remarkable what happens, by the way, as you read the story. Now, what happens next is really interesting. For 7 years, they have granaries. They're putting all the excess in the granaries for the 7 bad years that are going to follow after that. And so people begin to starve in the country. Need more money. They said, what can we do? And he said, give us your fields. At the end of 7 years, all of Egypt belonged to Pharaoh. There was no privately owned land after that. All of it belonged to Pharaoh. You and I might say that's fascist, but the fact of the matter is that he saved them. Not only did he save them, but people from other countries, because the famine was more than, and they're trying to get grain as well. They're trying to buy grain as well. And among those who come down are Jacob's sons. I love the story. I love the story. How that Jacob's sons come, he recognizes them. They don't recognize him. He was 17 when they sold him into slavery. He's in his 30s now. After all this time, he's in his 30s, maybe like an Egyptian now. He doesn't look like a Hebrew. And so they don't recognize him at all. But he recognizes them. And he does some things that you might think, well, he's just angry. No, he's testing them. He's testing them to see what happens. He calls them spies, and they said, no, we're not spies. And he gets them to tell them about his father, and he finds out that his father is still alive with us. And so he says, I'm not going to believe you unless you bring back that brother. Yeah, and that's his brother, his full brother, born to his mom when she was dying. They go back and they tell Jacob, look, we can't go back. And he says, but we're running out of food now. They said, we can't go back unless we bring Benjamin. And he says, you can't bring Benjamin. I'm not going to let you do that. I've already lost one son. I'm not going to lose the other one. He comes. And then Reuben stands up, who would have rescued Joseph if he could have. And he tells his dad, my life will be forfeit for him. I will die before I let anything happen to him. That's the way it's going to be. Well, they go down. You remember what happens. Joseph does it. He puts in Benjamin's, his own special cup. He puts that special in Benjamin's bags and then sends somebody after them after they've left and said, you stole something from us, and they find it in Benjamin's bag. And the brothers no longer are saying, Benjamin shouldn't be the favorite. They're no longer saying that. They're saying, we got to go back. And we're the ones who are going to have to take his place. That's what we'll do. And then when they all come back, Joseph not with them, they're over here because Egyptians and Hebrews can't eat together. And he can't stand it anymore, and he starts crying. And he tells them that he's their brother, and they're scared to death. I would be too. They wanted to kill him last time they saw him. I mean, really, that's who he is. And then they did sell him into slavery. I'd be scared of what he would do. There's time to, pay back. That's what it is. And he said, no. He said, you may have meant it for evil, but God meant it for good, that I can save this family. And he brought the dad down. They settled in the land of Goshen, and he took care of them. Now, some things happened later after Joseph dies, but in Joseph's case, there's some things I just really, really love about him. I really love about him. And I want to tell you something about the kind of faith that some life lessons in it for us. I hope there will be that we can learn from all of this. God gave Joseph dreams when he was really young. Joseph didn't have this dream for himself. God gave him the dream. His brothers are angry and they call him Joseph the dreamer, which they didn't mean as a compliment at all. He tells them about how that all bowing down to his sheaf and then the sun and moon and stars are all going to bow down to him, to his star. And here's how they understand it. And they're understanding it correctly. Chapter 37, verse 8, his brothers said to him, do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule over us? They hated him all the more because of his dream and what he had said. Okay? And then later on, when it came to the sun, moon, and stars, the father recognized he's talking about his own father, okay? And his father, he told his father as well as his brothers, and his father rebuked him and said, what is this dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down on the ground before you? His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in his mind, okay? Some of the dreams that God implants in us make other people uncomfortable. Can I just say that up front when I talk about I want to have the mind and faith of Joseph? God gave him a dream. Somebody says, well, God doesn't us. Do you remember in the book of Philippians that the Bible says that it's God who works in you both to will and to do according to his own pleasure? What does that mean? It means that God, when you have given yourself to him and you've decided that he's going to be your God and you'll follow him for the rest of your life, that sometimes he not only plants in us the ability to, plants in us the will. Some of the things that you dream about, and I don't mean dream like you fell asleep and you had a dream. I'm talking about some of the things that you think about as they scare you kind of to death, don't they? Things that could happen, things that we could do. Things that we could become. I think there are probably some people in this room that are retired or close to retired, okay? And God has been bugging you with something. And that is that you're still healthy enough and you have the means enough that you could do something great in the mission field. And you're wondering, should I do it? But it seems a little scary. Senior Adventures in Missions out of Lubbock sends people all over the world. They'll take some time and help you learn, and then they'll send you out for people who are anywhere in the world, including the United States, to do mission work. I think about the sojourners who travel all over the country and help build up churches all over the country, everywhere. And maybe you thought, that would be something really nice, but boy, would that be uncomfortable. That would be, maybe the will to do that is implanted by God. Maybe. I'm just telling you, God implants in you will make other people uncomfortable, might even make you uncomfortable, okay? Should Joseph have told his brothers and his dad, sometimes I think some of your dreams are best kept to yourself and just do them, okay? I don't know. I don't think Joseph was trying to be a person that says, look at me and look how great I'm going to be. I don't think that's what he was doing at all. It doesn't seem to be his nature. Other people uncomfortable. Your family might say, well, you should really be cruising and enjoying your life right now. You don't need to be doing mission work. You don't need to be doing all these other things. And they're not going to understand. That's okay. That's okay. Sometimes God implants dreams in us that makes people uncomfortable. Here's a second thing that I get from the faith of Joseph. Joseph believed that the reason he kept going. It's the reason he never gave up. It's really interesting to see when the world does its worst toward us, what it generally does is move us in the direction of God's plans, although we don't recognize it at the time. If you're 17 years old and your brothers hate you, they want to kill you, but instead opt to sell you into slavery, how did they know? They didn't. They couldn't have known. And how did Joseph know? He didn't. He couldn't have known that God is going to rescue Israel because they sold him into slavery. Here's the point. Let the world do what the world wants to do. God's plans will carry through. God knows what he's doing no matter what we're going through. If people are jealous, if people attempt to stand in your way, God has something in store for you, maybe through that very experience that will change your life. I remember a number of years ago when, years ago now, it was a horrible time. People were believing terrible things about me. Someone was telling them terrible things about me that absolutely were not true, and they knew it. They did it out of jealousy. They did it to diminish my ministry. They did a lot of things for that. I can remember complaining bitterly to God, if it's over, this is terrible, or putting me through this. What I found out when it all came out in the end is that God was prying my fingers off the stuff that I thought was important in my life and letting me hold on to the things that really did matter. And that through that time, and can I just tell you that if you were to offer me $100 million today, I would not go through that again. Okay, I wouldn't go through it again for anything. And made me a better servant of his through that horrible time in my life, more than in any other single time in all my life. God knows what he's doing, even when I don't. I need that kind of faith to believe that God knows what he's doing. In hard times, I want to be able to watch for how God shows up. I want you to listen to chapter 39, verses 2 through 6. So that he prospered and he lived in the house of his Egyptian master. When the master saw that the Lord was with him and that the Lord gave him success in everything he did, Joseph found favor in his eyes and became his attendant. Potiphar put him in charge of his household, and he entrusted his care to everything he owned. From the time he put him in charge of his household and of all that he owned, the Lord blessed the household of the Egyptian because of Joseph. The blessing of the Lord was on everything Potiphar had, both in the house and in the field. Joseph in charge, he did not concern himself with anything except the food he ate. Isn't that something? God's at work, okay? When you're going through your hardest time, watch for how God will show up. I've been fired once in my life. I don't know if you know that or not, but I was fired once, and it was a very interesting time. On the night that I got fired, my children were really small, and so I came home from the elders' meeting that night and sat down on the couch, and all the children got up in my lap and around me, and I said, "Guys, do you like adventure?" They said, "Oh, yeah, we love adventure." I said, do you guys like to travel? They said, we love to travel. I said, that's good because we're going to be moving. They said, where are we moving? I said, that's the adventure. We don't have any idea. But we get a chance to see what God's going to do. God opened up doors everywhere. It was incredible what God did. If you can, in your darkest day, say, God's right here, right now, and He's opening a door, and I don't even know what it is. But isn't this going to be exciting to see? It's an amazing thing. Whatever your dark day is, God's still there, and He shows up at all kinds of times. Here's another thing that I want to tell you, that integrity and obedience every time. Your reputation, some of you have heard me say this before, your reputation is meaningless. Your reputation is a puff of smoke. Your reputation can be ruined by any really good liar who wants to say whatever he wants to say. He can ruin your reputation, okay? But he can't touch your character every time. Every time. Don't worry about what everybody's saying about you. Think about what God's saying about you. Don't worry what everybody's thinking about you. What is God thinking about me? And if you hold on to your integrity, if you hold on to your character, if you hold on to the hand of God, no enemy that's crafty won. In the end, you win. Either in this life or the next, you win. Never lose your integrity. When Potiphar's wife wanted Joseph to commit adultery with her, this is what he says in Genesis 39, 9 and 10. How could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God? And though she spoke to Joseph day after day, he refused to go to bed with her or to eat. God. I need to teach my children. I need to have the faith of Joseph and teach my children that sexual activity outside of marriage is wrong, not because you might get some kind of sexually transmitted disease, not because the person might become pregnant, not because you could ruin your reputation if you do it, but because God says it's wrong, okay? Do it is because God said don't do it. How can you sin against God like this? This is where our commitment comes. This is where our integrity is. This is where our faith lies. It's in God. People aren't going to promote you. God is. People aren't going to be the ones who save you. God is. Trust Him. Don't do anything wicked against God. Here's a fifth thing that I get when I think about the faith of Joseph. Everything right. Difficult days will come. Trials will come to every person, no matter what. There will be times that will be dark. There may be days that you'll have more month than money. There might be times that people will believe terrible things about you. And there may be days that because of mistakes that I have made, even when I was trying to do right, that those consequences of every single one of those. But the fact of the matter is, when you're tested, you can come out like gold. In the end, no matter how long it takes. Pharaoh asked them, can we find anyone like this man in whom is the Spirit of God? Joseph, since God has made all this known to you and there's no one discerning and wise as you, you shall be in charge of my palace, of all my people who submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you. I love that. I love that. In the end, the testing proves who you are. All of us will be put in the crucible of testing so that the dross will be burned away. Sometimes I see Christians that are suffering, and I'm talking about maybe the loss of a loved one, maybe a divorce, maybe it's something terrible that's happened, and we start looking for things to understand why God is angry with us. And He's not angry with you. If you're a child of God and you're seeking to do His will, those difficult days are going to come for a lot of reasons. One is to make me better. The other is to show something to the world. If you're by the time you're 40 and all your kids are healthy and they have straight teeth and they do everything that they need to do, and you're able to clothe them and put them in the best of cars and the best of houses, The world isn't really impressed by that. And the world will generally not be won by that. But if you lose, and everything seems to be going, and you hold on to your hope, and you live your life in optimism and courage and faith, the world will want to know why. Be ready to give to every man who asks you a reason for the hope that's in you with meekness and fear. It's not because we're great. It's because God's great. When they come through, and we have some right now that work for Nissan who are in this situation. Nissan is cutting back because of a $9 billion loss last year. And a lot of people are going to lose their jobs. Some of them already have. When they hand out the pink slip to you and everybody else thinks it's the worst day in their life, and you're still finding calm and peace and courage, they want to know why. Because my life isn't in the hands of Nissan, that's why. My life is in the hands of God. It's an opportunity. So through these things, as an opportunity for His glory to be seen in us. Can I tell you that God really knows about your leadership ability? He knows that you can lead. Some are natural leaders, some grow into it and become natural leaders, but everybody leads somebody. There are people in this room, whether you know it or not. If you look to the kids that are 12 and 13, walk in this building, and there's a 12-year-old boy or girl, and their eyes are laser focused on you, and you don't even know it. They're watching you everywhere you go. You know why? They want to be like you. They want to be like you. Somebody says, well, I'm not that much, but they think you are. Some of you have children and grandchildren who think you're heroes. And you say, but I'm not that much. Okay? God knows that you're a leader. God knows that you make a difference. And by the way, God sometimes has to push you into leadership. I want you to think about what that's like. Joseph was pretty content to just go and run errands for his dad and wear that coat. He had everything he needed. I mean, why would he want to do anything else? Everything was good. And God pushed him into slavery. Why? To save his people. God pushed him into that point. He would never have chosen to be a slave. He would never have chosen to be an Egyptian. He wouldn't have chosen it. God pushed him into it. God has a way of doing that. When the early church is beginning to spread the gospel throughout Jerusalem, the leadership, from the standpoint of religious leadership, can't stand it. And so they began to Christians, and they do. It all starts when Stephen gets stoned to death. And then it becomes more acceptable, and you can kill other Christians too. And so Christians had to leave Jerusalem. And it says, those who were scattered abroad went everywhere preaching the word. When Jesus said, as you go into all the world, preach the gospel to every creature, the apostles at that moment didn't realize that it meant they're going to be pushed out everywhere. Right there in Jerusalem. There was no foreign mission program in the early church for the first few years of that church. It was all Jerusalem and the surrounding areas. How did they begin this mission into all the world? They got persecuted out of it. They got pushed away. And wherever they went, that's where they went preaching the word. Sometimes, because He knows you're a leader, because He knows you've got a message, He wants you to say something, and that's what he does. Maybe another thing about faith. Faith means that I need to pay attention to the people that God sends into my life. They might not seem like the people that you would have picked. Maybe it's a boss that's really hard to deal with. And God sent them into your life because who needs Him more than that guy? Maybe it's the person who's behind the counter at Walmart who is in a really bad mood and they snap at you about everything. Maybe God put that person in your life for a reason, and there's something you can help them with. For Joseph, it's a baker and a cupbearer. He could have said, hey, look what's happening to me, but he didn't do that. He took the time, interpreted their dreams, told them what to do. Can I just tell you, that he puts people in our life like that all the time. Pay attention to the people who come into your life. I have people who come to services at times. You'll see them come in at the last minute, and they sit pretty much to themselves, and they leave as soon as the last prayer is offered, and they get out so they don't have to talk to anybody else. And if you talk to them, most of them will say, I come here for God. I'm glad you do. But God sent you here for people, okay? Not just for him, but for people, to encourage one another, and so much the more as you see the day approaching. He intends for us to be a family of people, not just to ourselves. Pay attention to the people who are probably within 10 feet of you, really needs some encouragement today. Somebody that's probably sitting within 10 feet of you really needs prayer today. Somebody sitting within 10 feet of you could have their entire day changed if you would pay attention to them and give them one encouraging word, and it will take you between 10 and 30 seconds to do it, and you can change their life today. Somebody right close to you right now. Pay attention to the people who are in your life. I'm going to just give one more thing. I've got like 17 more points, and I'm not going to have time to get to them, but I'm going to do one more, okay? Faith tells me that everybody deserves a second chance, okay? Joseph, it would have been so easy to say, hey, you tried to kill me last time I was around you, and you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to get you back, okay? I may not kill you, I'll just throw you in prison. That's what I'll do. Or maybe he says, yeah, you deserve it. I'll let you die. But he didn't. He didn't. His brothers had changed, and he recognized that change. When Reuben offers his life for Benjamin's life, he knows his brothers have changed. Everybody can change. I hear people every once in a while say that people are who they are and they're never going to change. If I believed that, I wouldn't be a preacher. If I believed that, I wouldn't believe in grace. If I believed that, I wouldn't believe what the Bible says, because we can change. And we often do change. I know that I have. Somebody says, I'm the same person I've always been. And I say, I'm so sorry. Because you shouldn't be. You shouldn't be. We're in a process of growing here. And before the image of Jesus Christ, that's who we're becoming. And the people that are around us, they have the opportunity to have exactly that same experience of becoming more and more like Jesus Christ. Everybody deserves a second chance. I had one person tell me one time, he said, nobody has the right to hear the gospel twice until everybody's heard it once. And I think I understand what he means by that, and I appreciate that. He was a very evangelistic person, and he goes into all the world. But sometimes it's the second time or the third time or the fourth time that makes all the difference. When my dad was a young, godless man, just out of the Navy at the end of World War II, he went to work. He married my mom 3 months after he met her, and went to work at a textile mill. The person he was paired up with every night was an interesting character. His name was Julius Sprayberry. Julius Sprayberry was a member of the Lord's church, and a devout member. He led singing. He was a deacon. He loved the Lord all of his life. He would invite my dad to go to church with him. On Saturday, when they worked together, and they worked late shift, they worked the last every night, overnight. He said, I want you to go to church with me tomorrow. My dad would always say, no, I'm not interested. They became great friends. They would hunt together. Both Julius Sprayberry and my dad were excellent marksmen. They were great shots. They would hunt squirrels with 22 rifles and always get all what they needed. They were great companions. They loved playing games together. They did all kinds of things together. But every week, Julius would say, I want you to go to church with me. And every week, my dad would say no. He did this every single him 52 times. And my dad kept count. And at the end of a year, he said, Julius, you have been asking me to go to church with you for a year. I'll go to church with you tomorrow if you'll quit asking me. And Julius said, well, I'm glad you're going to church with me, but I probably will ask you again. And they went to church that day. And my mother was so impressed week. And so my dad went back with my mother, and the next week, and the next week. And then on one Sunday night, my mother stepped out in the aisle to be baptized. And my dad said to me later, I couldn't let her do that by herself. I needed to be baptized too. So they were both baptized on the same night at the South Commerce Street Church of Christ. Those of you who know my dad know that he preached all over the world, that he converted thousands upon thousands of people in the course of his life. All because there was a guy named Julius